important element in our strategy discussion. Okay? Because the strategy aims to perform better than the industry average. To perform better than the industry average, there must be competitive interactions with peers. Since we say competition has a substitution effect, the better you perform, your competitor will relatively gain the favor of customers or suppliers, will decrease. Strategy is the highest guiding principle for all actions taken by an organization, while competitive advantage is performing better than the industry average after competition. In the early days, when we look at competitive advantage, it was the kind described by Michael Porter, like the 5 forces analysis, or what is called generic strategy, which are some basic strategies. It's called low-cost strategy, or differentiation strategy, or a focus strategy targeting a narrower target customer group. So this kind of strategy, basically from our current perspective, doesn't really have much guiding effect. Why? Because you tell everyone, it's like using blood types to categorize different groups of people. It actually doesn't provide much guidance. So you want to tell a company, oh, you should adopt a differentiation strategy, you should adopt a differentiation strategy, or you should adopt a low-cost strategy. There is not much guiding effect. In the industry's value chain, or when a company is competing, we mentioned that in a market transaction, we have the so-called VPC framework, which is your value, price, and cost. The decision on price is determined by the market, jointly decided by both buyers and sellers. So how do buyers and sellers jointly decide? It means that you target a specific customer group, but there will also be other companies targeting the same group. And at this point, you are competing with each other for the same customer group. On the other side, which is often overlooked, is that on the supply side, you are also competing for similar supply chains. So the concept of competition is that you can substitute for each other, whether from the perspective of your customers, you will substitute each other. You and your competitor will substitute each other. Or from the supply chain perspective, you are their customer, and you and your competitor are both their customers. They can choose to supply to you or choose to supply to them. So there is also a substitution effect between you. Therefore, competition is an important element in our discussion of strategy. However, past analytical frameworks are overly static and overly simplified, which basically do not align with practical reality. Because in the practical operation of the marketplace, it is not like, oh, here is an equilibrium price. There is a equilibrium quantity. It definitely isn't. It's something that fluctuates daily. You take an action, I see it, and I might decide whether to respond or not. So it is. So when we talk about what is called dynamic competition, or what is called competitive dynamics, on this chart in the upper right corner, I wrote competitive dynamics, which some people also translate as dynamic competition. Now, the meaning of competitive dynamics, the dynamics actually has 2 meanings. Its dynamic represents a series of actions and responses, which is called dynamics. Then this series of actions and responses will change over time and vary with different opponents. Okay, when we talk about dynamic competition or competitive dynamics, one thing we particularly want to look at is that in this competition between you and your competitor, it's not like 2 people sitting at a table looking at each other and then deciding, oh, okay, our market equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity are like this. It's not like that. It must be he throws a punch, you kick, then he tries to attract his customers, and you try to win back some customers. He harasses your suppliers, and then you go and tie up this supplier. So this is a series of actions and responses. This is called dynamics. In addition to a series of actions and responses, it also involves other aspects, meaning that these actions and responses will change depending on different competitors, different points in time, and your own state. So this is what is called competitive dynamics, or dynamic competition. All right, so after understanding dynamic competition, or what is called competitive dynamics, in the courses I teach, I refer to it as competition dynamics. All right, competitive dynamics. Why is it called competitive dynamics? Because the interaction between firms is not only competitive, there are also some forms of cooperation. That is to say, the position of your firm and the position of the other firm, if the value you both want to create together can be jointly created, there is a complementary effect between the 2 of you. Okay, so sometimes it's quite interesting. Last time, we also talked about something called what we call strategic alliances. The term strategic alliances, this word has strategy and alliance. Let's talk about alliance first. An alliance is a cooperative relationship. So why is it called a strategic alliance? Because when we talk about strategy, we mean the highest guiding principle for all actions taken by an organization. Normally, you and your competitor should be competing against each other and not cooperating. So why would you have a cooperative relationship at this time? The cooperative relationship between competitors is given a special name called a strategic alliance. If you are already a good upstream and downstream supplier and you have a long-term partnership, then it is simply a long-term partnership. It doesn't need to be labeled as a strategic alliance. It is just an alliance or a long-term partnership. The strategic alliance is quite interesting. It is a cooperative relationship between competitors. Okay, for example, we mentioned last time, in the airline industry, there is a code sharing, for instance, flights from Taiwan to Japan, where both Japan Airlines and China Airlines are flying. However, Japan Airlines and China Airlines, or all Nippon Airways and EVA Air, are originally competing for customers on this route. But due to the seasonality of the route itself or market demand, each flight cannot be fully loaded. So at this time, it's like two tigers fighting, both getting hurt, so they form an alliance, which is called code sharing. At this point, both airlines don't need to fly simultaneously. You can use code sharing. Even if your ticket is bought from airline A, you can endorse it to airline B. At this time, it becomes a situation that should have been competitive, but it is in a cooperative relationship, which is also very common in the industry. If we use the Communist Party's words, it is about uniting its secondary enemies to strike the main enemy. Because it seems like they are all your enemies, but at this time, in order to survive or to fight for a bigger piece of the pie, you have to cooperate with your competitors. This is a strategic alliance. Now, if we look back at this diagram, we won't focus on cooperative relationships because here we are first talking about competitive relationships. So as we just mentioned, if I were teaching, I would treat both competition and cooperation as a series of actions and responses. When we assess cooperation, actually, we will later discuss the AMC framework of awareness, motivation, and capability, which can also be applied in the context of cooperative actions and responses.